I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Charlene. Welcome to Empowered, Life Lessons of Everyday Women.
Each episode, you are going to meet an amazing woman who has struggled through challenges both in her home life and work life and has become very successful. Meet Sarah T. Trust your instincts. Sarah has been involved with the healthcare industry for over 20 years. She saw firsthand the impact of provider burnout and wanted to find a way to make a difference. Her experience has included being a pharmaceutical rep, becoming a director of sales for a nutritional company, and ownership of a holistic healthcare practice. She brings incredible insight to the challenges facing various aspects in healthcare. So grab a cup of coffee, get in a comfy chair as we talk to Sarah. Welcome, Sarah. We're happy to have you with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I love this girl talk moment.
So if you were able to go back and talk to your 20-year-old self and give her a piece of advice, what would that be?
Yeah, that's so simple. And that is to trust your instincts sooner. So they call, your gut your second brain. And they actually do say that there is some innate wisdom in that instinctual thought. And I wish I never waited for permission. I wish I never waited for the perfect plan. I wish that I just jumped right into things. I am also in human design. I am a generator, not a manifesting generator. So I'm in knowing that also. Maybe that's not everyone's cup of tea, but for me, I know that when I start saying that everyone else has the answers, or I have to go invest in something or meet with my coach or wait for this perfect moment, I find that the instinctual thing that I thought from the beginning is always the best path for me. Even if I try a different path first, which I did in my younger days. And today I tend to just move forward and move more boldly. And so go ahead, 20-year-old Sarah. Just do it.
Sarah, I have to say that's definitely one of my life lessons as well. And I've talked about it on other episodes. Going with your gut is sort of everything for me. And that truly resonates with me.
Well, and I like the fact that you talked about, you basically talked about getting advice maybe from other mentors or whatever to verify what you thought you should do. And that is important in some ways. In some ways, it helps give you that confidence that says, okay, I'm in the right direction. But for you to be able to go back and take that and say, oh, you know what? I have good advice for myself. I think I'll listen to myself going forward. I think that's huge. That's really empowering yourself. So
absolutely
great. So you've been involved in the healthcare industry from the very beginning of your career. What are some of the driving factors that got you involved with healthcare?
Yeah, it's interesting. So many people talk about seeing such a broken system and wanting to fix things. And I think that's what motivates so many people in their careers in general is saying, yeah, I see a problem and I think I can do it better. And my perspective actually is not from someone who had any major health crises themselves, but actually from the provider perspective and saying, I watch provider burnout and I watch that as a big problem. And I saw that patients and individuals were not getting the help that they deserved and the attention that they deserved because of a broken system from a different perspective. So I grew up in medicine. Literally, I was born the first year my dad went to medical school, and he was always just my absolute hero. I remember delivering him lunch and dinner when he was on call, and he would flip up his white lab coat and run back into the hospital. And I would shout from the back window, "Do Superman, Dad, do Superman." Because he really was always my superhero. But watching a system that sometimes didn't pay my dad, watching a system that sometimes caused him to not show up for family events because there was always another emergency, always something else that had to be done, always someone else who he needed to take care of. And I saw that no one was taking care of him. And that really motivated me to go into more of the operations, the business, the ancillary services side of the healthcare industry to say, how can we support the people who are supporting us from a healthcare perspective to make their lives a little bit easier, a little bit more financially sound, a little bit more supportive. And that's what really drove me in healthcare, is being that sense of change. And it was a lot of fun during my, more traditional corporate career, traveling around the United States, and what ended up being, even I say the world because I did go to Canada and I went to the UK, and I would sometimes do global webinars and supporting practitioners in just having a better lifestyle, which in turn made them better providers to take care of their patients and clients.
I think everybody is better at their job if they've got that balance, if they're able to take care of their own needs as well as everybody else's. And you do think of physicians and nurses, people in the healthcare industry, they give out so much more than they're able to take in for themselves. And wow, I commend you immensely for looking at it from their perspective and trying to make a difference. That's fabulous. So the educational events that you did, my initial thought was it was for the general public, but it sounds like it was probably for the physicians and the healthcare workers themselves. Can you talk a little bit about that involved?
Yeah, we just looked at foundational health. I mean, and if we look at this, I remember having one of my first conversations, and I was in my early 20s, like maybe not even 21. I remember one of my first medical trainings that I went to alongside my dad, and the person next to me said, "We're all going out, to the pub for lunch to go, down the street." And I said, "I don't think I can get into the pub for lunch because I'm not 21 yet. So I'll just stay here in the hotel." So, I was really young, but I was sitting alongside my dad, listening to these really high level medical trainings, but on the ancillary side of preventative services. And I turned to my dad at one point, and he had already been in practice, probably 20 years at that stage. And I said to him, "Dad, are you recommending like a multivitamin to your patients?" And he was like, "I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about any of this." So that was so eye-opening that we were learning nutrition at the same time, that we could at the same time. So there's so many times now, right, that your friends and your family come to you and say, "My doctor never told me that I should consider vitamin D. My doctor never told me that I should look at my gut health. My doctor never said anything about diet." Your doctor never learned about that. That's like going to a car mechanic and asking them to give you a haircut. Like it's silly. You have to realize where they're trained. And so I just really wanted that training then to go out to providers who knew nothing. So, it wasn't just that we needed to do the training. We needed to take this training, make it simple, make it so they could not only understand it, but then put it into action after a weekend course, after a 3-hour webinar. And so that's really where my skill set was with my marketing and business background, to say, not only how can I teach you the science, but then teach you how to implement it really turnkey very, very quickly, because they don't have a lot of time.
Doctors are specialists for a reason, right? I mean, you got the family practice, you're not going to go to a heart doctor and ask them how to fix your leg, right? I mean, it's not going to happen. Yep. Well, It might happen, but it shouldn't.
So I know that you spent some time as a pharmaceutical rep. What were some of the biggest challenges you had doing that? And how did you get the opportunity to transition into this sort of self-paid initiatives and become what you're doing today?
What were some of the biggest challenges I learned as a pharmaceutical rep? I was one of the last of the older pharmaceutical reps where we actually had, access kept getting more and more limited. And it felt like even every month that I was in that profession. But what really stood out to me, Charlene, which I don't know if a lot of people know, is that there is this thing called formulary. So, all of the insurance plans negotiate with the different pharmaceutical companies and say what's on plan or on formulary and what's not, meaning what they'll cover and what they won't cover. But what a lot of people don't know is then that there's this added kicker called a withhold. So they basically give metrics to the providers to say, if you're a good boy and girl doctor, I will give you your money back at the end of the year if you stay on formulary. So I could have the best intervention, the best solution, that's out there. And I would have doctors agree with me, Sarah, we love what you're offering. We love the drug that you have. We think it's revolutionary, but our hands are bound by formulary. We're not going to go off formulary, and we're not even going to recommend it. We're not even going to tell people. And that, to me, it's
That's sad.
once you know better, you do better. And you're like, you know better and you're not doing better. What if there's that patient that would pay out of pocket? What if there's that patient that it wasn't us that was influencing the doctor's decisions? It was such a greater system that was influencing their decisions.
Yeah, really, it's frustrating to hear it as as somebody who would be a patient. And I'm sure it's frustrating from the business side of things. And, I mean, healthcare is definitely a big topic today. And yeah.
I mean, most people get into healthcare as a doctor or nurse to help people and help them get better. But when your hands are tied, I can't even imagine how frustrating that would be.
So you transitioned to what basically is self-paid initiatives and became a director of sales. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you had originally asked me to what was the opportunity, or I forgot how you worded it, but I have this saying I've had my whole life, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And no one is going to serve you up in an envelope on a silver platter like, here is this that's for you. You just have to kind of find your way and find your niche. Charlene, I don't know if you know, but I think that was my third or fourth time applying to work for the company. So I am someone who's not afraid of rejection. You close one door and I say, we're going to just find the next time. I don't hold grudges. I think one of my biggest weaknesses is I forget sometimes maybe why I should not be happy with someone or should be offended, because I just don't. I just say, that wasn't for me. What's next? I really loved working in healthcare. There was a particular supplement line that I still use today. I carry in my, private office that I now own and operate, called Nutrimetrics. And it was something that I felt really strongly about. I just was persistent. I was very persistent. I think the other thing too is always staying in integrity, always staying true to yourself. I never tried to mold myself for a position. I just always remained myself. And then the positions that worked for me came to me. Because I actually remember when I got hired from the company was as a just local regional position, very part-time. And there were 3 of us and we all got hired at the same time. And then there was a 4th member of the team. And at the end of that, I was the only one left. And so, to then get promoted to director of sales, it was just that natural. The longer you're there, the more responsibility, the bigger the title, the more that you're going to do, the more opportunities. My skill set got honed a little bit. And, we molded this into what was then a director of sales position. But yeah, it's really just, I never felt like I was any different from even just my little regional position, because I was the same person with just more experience under my belt, more knowledge under my belt.
So have you ever gone through and experience imposter syndrome at all? It doesn't sound like it.
Every day.
How do you overcome that to be as successful as you are?
I think what I do is I turn imposter syndrome into just, realizing how blessed I am for the opportunities. And, you have to really run towards sometimes being uncomfortable. You have to run towards those really difficult conversations. I mean, diamonds are created under pressure. If you don't have that, there's never going to be that amazing thing on the other side. And so when it gets really hard, even though it's uncomfortable, my experience, and I always just go back to, when have I already felt this? When have I felt this before? Because every time I feel like that, the next thing that happens is the biggest rush and the best and the just most exciting opportunity. And it happens to me time and time again. So I actually run towards the uncomfortableness. When I have that imposter syndrome, I say, okay, I'm doing something that is pushing me a little bit forward every single time.
So you've taken that experience of going through and battling through it. You sound like somebody who is an adrenaline junkie, but in a different way, right? I mean, I know people, my son, who is a climber, right? He experiences that rush, the new challenge or whatever, when he's going up the face of a cliff, right? He doesn't do it very often anymore, but I mean, you at least are experiencing it from a safer perspective, I guess.
From a healthcare perspective, there's a genetic variation to that. It's called the COMT gene. And so you're, someone who is, going to run towards that. And that is how I am genetically predisposed.
I like it. So you recently took ownership of a holistic healthcare practice. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you empowered yourself to make that leap?
That's another one of those. I mean, when I found out that this practice that had been on my radar for years, the former owner and I were the same age. We've been peers in the industry, building our own things, very different things, but parallel to one another. Our paths had intersected. I lectured both to her staff. I lectured to her community. She had been someone who had just been in my sphere for so long. So when I found out that this business was up for sale, and like going back just earlier to just the landscape of healthcare, watching so many private practices get gobbled up by big healthcare conglomerates, I know that the independent healthcare practice is a dying breed. It's something that's not going to be there for the next generation if I didn't make sure it was there for the next generation. And I just knew that this practice was so special that I wanted it to have that longevity for my kids, for the community. I knew how important this practice was in this area. And it was one of those where you're just lying in bed with my husband one night, staring up at the ceiling saying, is this for us? Is this what we need to be doing? I feel really called to this. It was not on my dream board, not on my bucket list or bingo card, but I knew it was going to take a different skill set, but the skill set I already had was going to be a great foundation. And it has been one of my greatest challenges, yet greatest honors. I have really learned so much. And the community stories, the testimonials from people, when they say there was nowhere else to go and you guys were there for me, knowing that I've kept this business going has just been so rewarding. And I can't wait to see what the next couple of years bring.
Awesome.
So there's a payoff, not only financially, but there's also a payoff to you internally.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Which has been different. I think this has been different. It's a much different project than anything because it is so close to home and feels so close to my heart.
So you touched on something. So you knew you would be strong in certain aspects of that business, but not in others. So you saw the gaps. How did you go about filling those gaps to make sure that you were and stayed successful?
Well, platforms like this, podcasting, right? So, I mean, whatever I'm not great at, I just put into my podcast app and my university on wheels, going back and forth to the office, back and forth to the hockey rink with the kids, wherever I am. I got my AirPods in and I'm, learning. And a lot of it had to do around HR. A lot of it had to do around networking with other small business owners. I had been on such a national scale. I've done a lot of marketing, but I haven't done that guerrilla feet on the streets, that type of marketing. And the HR, that's a whole other ballgame.
Kind of leads us to my next question, which is, what are the traits that you're looking for when you do hire somebody? And do you have any insights? What new hires can be successful, or what are you looking for?
Yeah. And there's not so many traits. I mean, you have to just find some, again, let's go back to my gut feeling. I wish I could just go back to that because in those initial interviews, they always play out. And sometimes you try to over justify or pigeonhole someone into a need that maybe you have. And sometimes we have enough time and a big enough runway to take a little longer to bring someone into the team. And sometimes we don't. One of the things that I've actually leaned into a lot more has been, and Charlene, you'll know, because I used to do a lot of training on personality styles and being able to appeal from a sales perspective to different personality styles. But now when I do that's something all my team members do, even in the interview process. So leaning into their personality styles and finding a role that's really going to fit them. And then saying, let's then reshift the team's responsibilities around to play off of people's strengths and not spend so much time training them on their weaknesses.
I think that's great because you are going to grow better if everybody is using their best strengths, right? And they'll grow in other areas watching other people.
Yeah. And there's so much that can be outsourced with technology today, too. So I really try to empower my team. Like, can we do it faster? Can we do it easier? Can we do it with less effort and less time? Because that's going to just be able to, what we can't outsource is the client relationships.
Right.
We can't outsource, calling someone because we know that they were going through a difficult time the week before and we just want to check in. It's everyone, whether it's the practitioners, my support administrative team, my marketing team, we're all together really trying to enhance and make the client experience so much different.
Making it very personal. So
Yes.
this is kind of along the same lines, perhaps, but do you see AI impacting your business at all?
100%. It's making my business so much more affordable, really, and allowing us to do more of that person-to-person interaction that's so needed because so many of the other things are automated.
So you've experienced, or have you ever experienced, not meeting your own expectations or the expectations that other people have set on you? And if so, how did you handle that?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, I think every morning I write a very robust, ambitious to-do list, knowing I'm only going to get to about 10% of it. And it's probably more my own expectations than anyone else's. But then we recalibrate every single day and say, where did I fall short? I think if you wait till the end of the year or you wait until the end of the quarter, it's just too long. I mean, you have to almost every single day say, where did I win and where did I fall short? What can I do better? And having that sort of self-reflection and honesty is so important.
So we know that you're a new mom again. How have you handled conflicting expectations and commitments between work and family?
People that typically will ask the question as like, how do you balance it all? And I've always said that I've never believed in balance. I always believe in imbalance. I learned this from such an early age in even just elementary school, middle school, high school, playing sports. Listen, I'm not any kind of phenomenal athlete by any sense, but I have 3 brothers, one who plays professional hockey. So we come from a big athletic family. And sure, I dabbled in some sports myself. So there was always a season, right? There was, whether it was a baseball season for my brothers, whether it was volleyball season or swim season for me, whether it was, dance competition season for my sister. And we knew that there was always this period where you go real hard. The practices are long, the hours are tough. It's a more of a concentrated time. We all go through these things, right? These major life events. Maybe someone's getting married in your life. Maybe, you're moving. Maybe you have this big deadline at work, right? Where there's just more time that is imbalanced towards one thing. That's always going to happen. That if people just think it happens like once every 5 years. It's always.
It's daily.
I agree with you. Imbalance, they don't recognize that the imbalance is sort of normal. It's a normal thing. And being in imbalance is probably not normal.
But every day is imbalanced.
Let's talk about maybe a scenario that might happen, because it happened with myself quite a few times. You've got a kid that's in a sporting event, and you want to go to that sporting event, and your client needs you at that specific time. How do you balance that? Because for me, it was always an internal conflict, right? I want to be there to support my kids, but I also had to be someplace else. And so how do you juggle that so you're not feeling guilty all the time?
And the same thing, like I'm going to be totally imbalanced in things where, when it's the big tournament, I'm not missing that. But when it's the, game that's every single Saturday, again and again and again, but I know this client needs me, my kids understand that. And I involve my kids enough in my work where they come to work with me. They see what I do. They're involved in the wins also, where, we can say, I can come back and I can say, this is what mom did today. And this was the result. And that was my win. And how was your hockey game? And I think them seeing that I have an independent life, that I have my own goals and ambitions, that I am doing things that are not just for myself, but for a greater cause, they're definitely proud of me. I hear when they talk about, what their mom does and the work their mom does. And there is that sense of pride, but they're also really involved in it as well.
That's awesome. I like that approach. So, what type of culture are you trying to build in your company?
Really supportive. I mean, one of the ones where you feel heard, whatever the opposite of being gaslighted is, there's a word for that. Just being believed, understood. I think that's both from the client side and from the team side. I think that we're a team, other than my husband, we're a team of all women. And having that flexibility, having that compassion, it's such a collaborative environment from a team perspective. And I could tell you that my team members say that they've never worked anywhere like where our office is, that they've never felt so supported like they do, at our office. And then the clients say the same thing. I walk in there every day like I'm hosting a cocktail party from the beginning. People come in, let me take your jacket. I'll hang it up over here. Do you want something to drink? How can I help you? I have a saying called surprise and delight. We really find moments where we can give them a perk, give them something extra, go above and beyond. And, it's everything from I will personally drop supplements off at people's houses if I know that they really need it, to, we'll just write them a little note or give them something extra in their, bag as they're checking out. Just drop them a, text message and say, just thinking of you. Those things I think are just where we go above and beyond. And
that personal touch is huge, really huge. That's awesome. So do you have any do's and don'ts that you've learned from either watching other managers or other managers that you've worked with that you want to share with our listeners, of things that make you successful or things that don't make you successful?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to I think when you really know your team and you know the personality styles, and that's something I'm going to go back to that theme, that really leaning into people's strengths and celebrating their strengths and strategizing with them on their weaknesses, not setting expectations that they're going to change overnight or that things are going to be radically different. I think coming together collaboratively, I learned this. My dad for years was a patient safety officer. He used to audit hospitals on making them safer work environments. And they have a term in the hospital that's called flattened hierarchy. So anyone from, the brand new nurse to the senior medical doctor has the same authority in the operating room when you see something, really speaking up and saying something. And you don't have to wait and defer necessarily to a more senior person, because you might see something that could really make it or break it, right? Luckily, what we do is not life or death. So, I say it's a lot easier, but I just tell everyone's opinion matters just as much. I've had summer interns come in and look at systems and things I have in the office and turn it on its head, and it made it so much more efficient and better. And I think having that kind of just open communication, I have this idea, but someone tell me if you see it differently. And my team is really open to giving me their opinions. And that really has made us a lot more efficient in the long run.
I think what you're talking about is empowerment.
Absolutely.
It's just that you're empowering everybody to be their best version of themselves and not dwell on the things that maybe make them not as strong in life, and encouraging them. So that creates just an ongoing, it's a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
Of success. And if you feel like somebody's being heard or somebody's listening to you, or I was in the creative world. So, when I would throw ideas out at my account executives and they go, oh no. And I go, let's just do an A, an L, and a Z idea. That was always my philosophy. Let's put something that's kind of conservative what they asked for. Let's push the envelope. But that was a strength of mine. And I just found that strength to go forward on that. So, Sarah, what would you say is your biggest life lesson, and any additional advice that you would like to give to our listeners? Because this has been really
wonderful,
interesting. It's really enlightening. And I think you have a lot of great nuggets here for our listeners, but your biggest life lesson would be?
The moments that are the hardest to avoid are usually, the ones that you try the hardest to avoid are usually the moments that reshape you. And that, when you feel discomfort, it's not always a sign to stop. It sometimes can be a sign that growth is happening, or, that something else is about to really come to life. And so every major breakthrough in my business, my family, myself really happened right after a season that I thought that was the end. This is going to break me. I can never get past this. But I think that this biggest thing is staying present, really grounded. I mean, it takes such a mindset, and that's a practice. If you can stay present, if you can be mindful through the hard parts, you'll come out more grounded. You'll have a much more regulated nervous system, which is going to be giving you capability and alignment bigger than anything you could ever imagine.
Wow. I love it.
This has been great. Thank you so much. We know that you have a very busy schedule these days with a newborn, so we really appreciate you taking the time and talking with us today.
It was great. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
To our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Empowered Life Lessons of Everyday Women. We would really appreciate if you could leave us a rating or a review. If you have any challenges or questions you are facing, we want to hear from you as we value your input and suggestions. And if you have a compelling story or life lesson you would like to share, please connect with us at empoweredlifelessons@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, other social media platforms, or visit us at empoweredlifelessons.com.
In our next episode, meet Jordan T. Jordan shares her struggle with anxiety and finding out what she loves to do. Her love of animals has led her to be a successful owner of a grooming business, Posh Pups.